Hello, you are watching, listening, following on India. I'm John Norman, Jarrod Kimber alongside me. Jarrod, hello.
Hello.
Nice to see you. We're breaking away from our coverage of West Indies against England to talk about the Border Gavaskar. And what we thought this week is that we do our stock take.
Hey.
But we do
You love the stock take.
I do. I love the
I
stock
should never
take.
have told you about this idea.
It's all about the stock take. But we're going to do it with Australia because we've kind of covered off India. And not a lot has changed since we were last talking about them because no one's allowed to see the training at the Wacker. The blinds are up, no drones, all phone. I read something that the workmen have to put away their phones.
Yeah,
I mean, it sounds like...
I remember this has been going on for a while with India, and a lot of it is, I can't remember which Australian ground it was, but it certainly happened at the Wacker, where like so many people were lined up outside that it caused problems for traffic and things, like for people literally trying to see the stars. So I know some of it is about that they want to train in secrecy, but a lot of it is also about that it just causes massive problems. I've seen like people outside of grounds for India like holding babies over the fence, be like, over there is Sachin and Rahul, like. So I get the whole idea, but it does look a little bit ridiculous, especially in a town like Perth. I don't want to slag off Perth. I will slag off Perth.
I was going to say, I mean,
it's the
are
first
there crowds in Perth?
A place like Perth where like they don't have a lot of big name people. Like I remember, this is such a weird aside, but I happened to be staying in the same hotel as Drake in Perth at one stage. Right,
Okay.
and it was like a news story where Drake was staying within Perth and everything.
Yeah.
Like it's not like Melbourne and Sydney and Brisbane where there's a bit more of that sort of stuff happens. It's a long way from everywhere, Perth. Let's be honest. So if you're an Indian fan, like,
Of course you're going to head to the
Yeah,
Wacker to try and
it
catch
makes
a
sense.
glimpse. Okay, well, look,
I'm not friends with Drake, by the way. I'm more of a Kendrick guy.
Okay. Let's go through the 11 then. Should we start with... Let's start with Usman.
Yep.
Uzi, who will be opening the batting alongside McSweeney. Sounds like a kind of cop from a TV show in the 80s. So Khawaja could be his last series, or certainly we're approaching the end of what's been... Well, we were there, weren't we, in 2010 when he made his debut.
What was the score that he made?
What was it, 36?
37. The world's
37.
greatest 37.
That was the series of the Rob Quiney.
No, it
9.
wasn't the Rob Quiney 9. The Rob Quiney 9 comes after that. I think Rob Quiney 9 was against South Africa.
Oh, the following summer.
Yeah. But yeah, it was that period of time where you could make a very small amount of runs and get some credit. I mean, I thought Usman Khawaja batted well, but yeah, I think I made a lot of hay on the fact that Australians might have slightly over-egged the 37 in that particular innings.
He was at the final ball of the day. Can you remember?
No, I don't remember that.
Yeah,
bit at all.
it was a truncated day. It started raining.
Oh,
and
okay.
He was caught top edge sweep, and he was caught, walked off, and then the players walked off, and that was it.
I remember it being like a really overcast day, and that
Yeah.
being part of the hype was he played well while the ball was moving around. Look, he's interesting. He's one of those players I've started calling like a batch run scorer, right? Like he scores a lot of runs, then he stops, then he scores a lot of runs, then he stops. And I'm not just talking about test level. There's a couple of years of first class cricket where he didn't make any runs, right? And then he's come back and
Yeah.
he's managed to make a lot of runs. So at the moment, he's averaging 29 this year. I haven't looked at his Shield form or, whether he's played any Shield games or anything, but just international cricket, I'd be interested to know if he's now on another decline. And usually for him, they last about 2 years, and then he works it out and he makes all the runs to make up for it again. At his age, with his profile and how well he's known and thought of in Australia, you could see this being his last series if he wanted to. My bigger concern from an Australian point of view is he in the form to be able to carry a new opener? Because all these other times, he's had to carry openers, Warner, when they go away, because Warner doesn't make any runs when they travel. But when they come back home, Warner makes all of the runs, and Aussie doesn't have to do anything. Here, if he's not in great form, he's going to have to cover for a young opener as well.
Let's talk. So what are we saying with Khawaja? We're going to give him an 8.
I'm going to give him a 7.5 at the moment because
I'm going to write it down because
Yeah.
we struggled last time because I didn't write it down.
because these are really important. Like,
Really, really important.
Lords actually have a
We're
collection of our stock
definitely-
reports.
We're definitely going to need these marks again.
Yeah, I'm going to go 7.5 just based on recent form. I think shifts him back a little bit, but he's still Usman Khawaja. I'm not too worried about him.
I'll get you, McSweeney.
There's a bit of that. There is, I've told you so many times, McSweeney, you've got to play by the rules.
McSweeney doesn't play by the rules. I mean, this is it. It always seems to be one batter when it comes to Australia. It's that seems to be the narrative. because everything's so set. It has been for so long.
Someone told me he's the first Australian batter to make his debut since Will Pucovski, or was it Cameron Green? But it's a long time now between Australian batters making their debut, which tells you that they've been recycling through the same amount of players. And there was, coming in, Bancroft and Harris were back in the conversation again, right? So, David Warner, Davey had his hand up over and over again saying he was available. So it almost happened again. I don't think McSweeney is a great player right at the moment, but I think he's an interesting prospect, and I think he looks like a cricketer who really understands who he is as a player, and that's a good position to start from in Test cricket.
Yeah.
But he's going to face Bumrah.
For how many overs and how many tests?
That also very good question. But then Mohammad Shami would come back. I'm just saying he will.
You don't want to see a non-opener opening on debut. That's against Bumrah. That's not really where you want to be.
No, I suppose, to be honest, it's probably better that Mohammad Shami is not playing in the first test, because that's the guy you really don't want to face with the new ball. Bumrah's the guy you probably don't want to face when he comes back for his second spell more than the new ball. But you're right. It's not an ideal situation to be in. They had a teenage sensation. They had a couple of those recycling guys that I was talking about before. It's grim. Essentially, Usman Khawaja, I don't know if it was on The Grade Cricket or what podcast he was on, but he was talking about the fact that no one's making any runs in Shield cricket anymore. And part of the reason is since Kookaburra changed that ball, the ball started moving around in Australia like it has everywhere else in the world. And just opening batters are just nicking off all the time. We see it it's the same thing happened to Test cricket as happened to Shield cricket. And it means that there isn't anyone there making runs.
It's a bit difficult to give him a mark, really, isn't it?
Well, he's a makeshift opening batter going up against Jasprit Bumrah. We'll give him a 3. If he does better than a 3, he's done well. Or do you want to give him a 4?
Yeah, I'm going to give him a 5. Marnus at 3. There was the little all this kind of Steve Smith up, down, all this kind of stuff, and then there was even a talk that maybe Marnus might open.
Yeah.
But that never really made any sense to me.
Well, they didn't have another number 3 either.
Well, exactly. Well, Khawaja. Marnus Labuschagne. I mean, look, we were there in 2019 when he came in against England, and he hit Steve Smith heights, didn't he, for a couple of years. It's not been that Marnus Labuschagne for quite some time, though.
No, look, I think there's a lot of people who said he got dropped a lot early in his career. I actually think it's less to do with that. I think it's more to do with the fact he made a lot of runs at home in Australia. I know he played brilliantly in England, so we're not saying he can't play away from home, but the vast majority of his runs have come at home. But also, we've seen him, Daryl Mitchell, Blundell, Conway. I'm trying to think of someone else. There's probably a couple of others as well who came in sort of midway through that wobble ball era and did brilliantly well. Babar Azam is another one. These guys did brilliantly well in that era, and then what happens is teams start to work out how to bowl to them slightly differently, and I think that's what's happened with Marnus. And I think he's good enough and talented enough and certainly works hard enough to overcome that, but it is not the easiest thing to overcome. So his form is probably a 6 point... Well, no, we gave Usman a 7.5, so Marnus is at 5.5, a 6? I don't even know what his average is over the last couple of years. It can't have been good, though. It's not good.
No, it hasn't been good. I'm going to give him a 5.5 until you realise that you should get a 6 or a 5. Steve Smith.
He's good. Used to be.
Yeah, he is
He used to be great. Now he's good. Maybe that's a better way of putting it.
When you're talking about bankers, within the India side, who's going to score the runs?
Yeah.
Who's going to score the runs? That's what everybody was asking to enable India to win a couple of test matches. Actually, the same question can be asked of Australia. I think they've got enough batters in there to collectively make a score, a team score. A 320, a 350. But if you're looking at like scores of 450, 550, those kind of stereotypical Australian first inning scores, we'll have a bat, mate, and then you're out the game by lunch because they're 120 for one, and the bowlers are tired already, and one's gone off injured, and that's it, the game's over. It's basically either Travis Head, who hasn't actually played that much cricket at all, and Travis Head will score 250 in about an hour. Apart from that, I'm kind of struggling. I mean, Smith will score runs, but I don't see him scoring the kind of runs that define a series in the way that he used to.
The one thing I would say is that the pitches have changed in Australia, and so those 450 scores, no one's been scoring them in Australia for a period of time now because of what I said before, right? The ball and the pitches have changed quite a bit. The interesting thing I find about Smith is he wasn't making any runs at 4, right? He asked to change and go up and open the batting. And now there are all these people that go, oh, now he's back to his normal spot and make runs again. I'm like, well, that's not a given.
No.
Like, I had no problem with him opening. I actually kind of liked the idea of him opening and Cameron Green at 4. Everyone else in Australia disagreed with me, and so they've gone away from it, and that's fine. McSweeney only averages 38 in first-class cricket. I think it's a good 38, if that makes sense, because he's 24, 25. So it's not the end of the world, but he's not slamming the door down. But there isn't another number 4 out there if Green's not fit either. And, you know, we can get to all that sort of stuff later. But with Smith specifically, I'm just this idea that he's going to go back to 4 and just be himself. I thought that Root making all those runs would kind of inspire Kohli and Smith to be like, well, let's have a couple more years here. Because if you think about it in the greatest batters of all time, Smith is at the top of that list. Root is now not quite on that list, but maybe knocking on the top 10, 15 list. And Kohli's at 25, but sinking. So I kind of thought, well, Smith is looking back going, well, I don't want to end up my career under Root, like I dominated Root. And Kohli's going, I was the same as Root for ages. It'd be interesting to see if that drives either of them to another level of competitiveness, or if it doesn't. I don't know. And in Smith's case, at his best, it's out of him or Sobers, perhaps, who was the best since Bradman, right? Like, and I'm talking about at their peaks. Right, and maybe you throw Viv Richards and Brian Lara and Tendulkar in all that, but I'm talking literally just at their peak. Those guys, you know, Smith had a peak that we haven't really ever seen before.
In terms of the duration of it.
Yeah, and also the average each year, right?
Yeah.
So Kohli had this incredible 6 or 7 year period, and when you look at him compared to Smith, it still looks small. And yet Kohli's is one of the best peaks we've ever seen as well. So I find it hard to look at that and just be like, well, Smith's going to work it out. But I just don't like writing off Smith because I did that once and he went on to be one of the greatest batters of all time. So I'm just gonna say he should be fine. What I would say is, if this is low-scoring test matches, that top 4 does not make me feel completely comfortable. I think it makes me more comfortable that Mohammad Shami's not playing.
Travis Head. Oh,
wait a minute.
What do we say for Smith? What do we say? The problem with Smith is you basically. You are comparing Smith, not with any other batter in the world. You're comparing Smith to Smith.
Yeah.
When he was a god.
So what he was 10 out of 10, right?
Yeah.
Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
So in the let's just have a look at the last 2 years here. So last 2 years, he averaged 42 last year, and he's averaging about 30. So about the same as Usman Khawaja. The 2 years before that, he was averaging 15. He had some other average 50. Sorry. So if he's averaging 37. Over the last couple of years, that's still quite low, isn't it?
Yeah.
He's got to be ahead of Marnus. So if you had Marnus at 5.5, I would have Smith at 6.5.
Okay, Travis
Do you
Head.
hate the fact I refuse to give you whole numbers?
I'm okay with it.
Okay.
There's plenty more hate about you.
Travis Head in Australia is a 9.
Yeah.
That's easy. He's already made runs against India. He hasn't made as many runs on the road, but that, as you said, he actually hasn't played that much Test cricket while he's been this version of Travis Head. I think he's fantastic. He can change a game. He should be as confident as anything. I don't think the Indians want to play against him at all.
No.
So and also he doesn't have to worry as much perhaps about an off spinner coming around the wicket, because I don't know if India will be able to use Ashwin or Sundar in that sort of secondary role.
Totally on board with all of that. Mitch Marsh?
Can't bowl, can he?
Nope. Well, if he does, it'll be like maybe 1 or 2 ginger ones.
And it'll be towards the end of the series. But as far as I'm aware, he's injured at the moment. Did you hear the story he told on Grade Cricketer about him coming home from the World Cup? And like, instead of having a parade and everything, he came home from the World Cup, and it was like, he got off the plane, it was 9 a.m. He went to the local bar, it wasn't open yet. He had to wait for someone. Then he goes into the bar when it opens, he's having a couple of drinks. 2 other guys are talking about cricket, and he sort of introduces himself to them as if to go, I just won the World Cup. And then the conversation got a bit weird, so he left. If you can find it on social media, he's such a good storyteller, Mitch Marsh. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Anyway, I completely forgot what you asked.
That's the second plug for the Grade Cricketer. I mean, they are good.
The other podcast, the Usman Khawaja one might not have actually been the Grade Cricketer. I just remember seeing Usman Khawaja on a podcast.
Probably was.
Yeah, I mean, at this time of the year, they work with the TV companies, don't they? So they're very good at getting,
Cummins is on them as well.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Of getting all the players coming in, which I think is great. Having players like that out there. Mitch Marsh again. This is a common thread. Again, hasn't made any runs this year. You know that.
Yeah.
But he made a ton of runs last year. He can't bowl. He's still Mitch Marsh. But I think his strike rate plays a bit of a part in this because you don't want to be in a situation where he gets away from you, do you? So I'm gonna give him a little bit more grace, especially as a number 6, and say he's a 7. Write it down.
Okay. 7.
7.
We will move on to Alex Carey and the bowlers in a second.
Oh, okay. Now time for an ad break?
Now time for an interview. We've been joined by Karthik Krishnaswamy from Cricinfo. Just to have a little look at the Indian perspective as we head into the Border Gavaskar. So we are, a week out from the start of the first test match. The phony war has been going on for about, a couple of weeks. We've had the story surrounding the ball change in the India A game. We've had David Warner coming out and speaking about the India side. We've had plenty of debate about the makeup of the team. Will Rohit Sharma be there for that first test match? What's the mood in India going into the series? Have people kind of climbed down from the wall of the New Zealand series, and now there's been enough gap between that series and this one for people's hope to start rising again? Where do you think we are in India ahead of the Border Gavaskar?
I mean, just judging by social media and stuff, there's a fair amount of pessimism, which I think might have been there even if India had beaten New Zealand as they'd have been expected to. But it's a strange sort of mix of, like a feeling that India don't quite have the same sort of strength. They're on a sort of downward curve since a lot of their stars are well into their 30s now, and so people are bracing for the worst, basically. Yeah,
So the worst has just happened, isn't it?
Yeah, the worst just happened. I love that. Is there
so
10
true,
more tests of worst to come? Is that what they're worried about?
Yeah, possibly, yeah. But there's a general feeling of pessimism, but there's also always a kind of, it's India, like, there's always a certain amount of hope mixed into that as well. And plus, it's just so completely different from playing in India. And in a way, it's starting afresh, even though they've just suffered, like you said, probably their worst ever defeat in terms of like where it was and the magnitude of it.
What about Mohammad Shami? I've seen clips of him bowling online. Like, is that exciting anyone? Because I mean that's a big deal for me. That I wouldn't say it tips the series back in India's favor, but it makes me start to think, okay, they've got a side here again.
I think if he plays a couple more Ranji games and shows that he can last that length of time while keeping his speeds up, keeping his intensity up, then they might consider, okay, let's bring him in after the second test or whenever that is, whenever they feel comfortable making that call. From what I saw, from the highlights we watched on that were being shared on Twitter and stuff, it looked like he was bowling some good balls, but B, it also looked like he was jogging in a little. And it was just a very small sample size of bowling that we did see. So I don't know how much to read into it. It's, of course, hugely encouraging that he's back and bowling, but it's far too early to make any kind of call in terms of bringing him in and adding him to the squad.
Would you feel confident to name the team for that first test?
I have a feeling. I mean, if Rohit isn't there, I have a strong feeling Rahul will open with Yashasvi Jaiswal simply because of his experience and he's a known quantity. And despite the strange up and down roller coaster of a career he's had, there's still a strong belief that he's a quality player and with at least like the technical tools to succeed. And the last time India played in similarish conditions in South Africa, he made probably the best 100 of his Test career. So
Mm.
I don't think, I mean, the public reaction to Rahul can be quite
Mm.
like people jump on his back very easily, right? It doesn't take too many low scores for the perception that he's under pressure to form. But within the team, I don't think that is shared. And
No.
I would have, if Rohit had been playing, I wouldn't have been surprised if he'd batted at 6 instead of Sarfraz Khan. Uh, I'm not sure I can name an entire 11, but I'm pretty confident Rahul will be there. I have a feeling Dhruv Jurel, after the 250s he made for India A, might get in ahead of Sarfraz, and uh, it'll be probably 4 quicks and Ravindra Jadeja. The rest.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because it's a series where we've been building up to it for a long time now, KK. Like
Mhm.
even when we didn't want to, we've been building up to it. It feels now that it's completely different to what the series we thought it was going to be. It was supposed to be a heavyweight contest, and
Mhm.
it feels a little bit more like Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson at the moment, right? Where you still want to watch it, but you're just assuming it's not going to be quite as entertaining as it should be.
Hmm. I mean, it could work both ways if sometimes like the most exciting cricket is between two flawed teams. And I don't,
Mm.
for having said that, I don't think Australia are looking quite as flawed as India right now. I mean, for starters, they have four, their four best bowlers who are going to be on the park
Mm.
in Perth. And there's enough experience in that top order. And uh, as much as it might look like they're a little out of sorts, I think come day one of that test match, their preparation will be out of the way, and I think they'll have a fair idea of how to go about things. Uh, India, yeah, I mean, it feels like Bumrah or bust. Uh,
Mm.
yeah, though, yeah, there's the rest of the fast bowling it's just the inexperience and the sort of unpredictability of Siraj, right? So depending on which Siraj shows up, and if say someone like Prasidh Krishna surprises people, like he showed in that India A series that he has the attributes that kind of can be successful in Australian conditions. So if a few things come together for India, I think it may not be as bad for them as people fear.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of went through a couple of stages after we commentated on the New Zealand series, and after that, it was like, well, how on earth are India going to win in Australia? Um, and it's a huge challenge that awaits for sure. But they've kind of done it before with teams that have been falling apart at the seams. You know, one of the old cliches about Australia is that if you don't get ahead of them early, then they're just going to stamp all over you. But of course, India lost both times in the first Test match and the last Border Gavaskars in Australia, didn't they?
They
They went
won the
on to
first
win.
test in 2018-19 in Adelaide.
Yeah.
Did they win
Uh,
that one? So they
yeah, they
lost the
won that
first.
one.
So they
They
lost the first one
last time around.
last time.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I don't. Are we not just overblowing Australia a little bit? You know, they lost to West Indies at the start of the year. Steve Smith isn't Steve Smith from, I don't know, 2015 to 2020.
Hmm.
Marnus Labuschagne isn't looking like the Marnus Labuschagne from 2019 to 2023 or something.
Hmm.
Khawaja is quality, of course, but you don't really fear Khawaja because, of course, he does take his sweet time. You got a new opener in there. They've got all-rounder problems. I don't know. I just got a feeling that maybe it's going to be a bit closer than what we now think.
I think the all-rounder problem could, over a series of 5 tests. This is one of the reasons why they struggled towards the end of the last series, 2021, where the same 4 bowlers played all 4 tests, and by the end of it, they just had too many overs in their legs, and uh, you know, kind of aided and abetted by Cheteshwar Pujara spending so much time at the crease as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think not having Cam Green's overs could be an issue for them, which they might have to figure out ways to deal with. But then again, I don't know. It depends on the pitches as well. Might they go? I think the indications are that they'll go a little more grass on the pitches, a little more seam coming in than is usually the case in Australia, and make it so that India have to go with a 4-1 combination rather than a 3-2. That is 4 fast bowlers and 1 spinner rather than 3 and 2. Because the more conditions allow India to play 3-2, I think the more even the contests will be.
Yeah.
On paper. So yeah, so if the contests are shorter, if it's like more bowling friendly pitches, doesn't take as long to get a team all out, then maybe by the 4th and 5th test you aren't as tired out by the same 4 bowlers bowling all the time.
Well, I can tell you that the bowling average in Australia has dropped by 10 runs in the last 3 years. So the pitches have been a lot more grassy. They've been doing a lot more. So it's not even that they have to change anything for India. If those pitches stay the same, then I think you're right. You're not seeing the long spells. And also, there isn't a Pujara this time, right? So it will be different kind of batting from India rather than the rope-a-dope that we saw last time.
Yeah, that's right. It's just the newer players in the side just don't bat that way. And yeah, having said that though, like once he's in, Yashasvi Jaiswal has shown he likes to just bat, and he can do that all day if he has to. So it's but yeah, there is no Pujara type of batter in that top 6. But yeah, it could just be a collective kind of effort that pulls them through if need be. Yeah.
Brilliant stuff. Thank you very much, mates.
Thank you. It was lovely being here.
Yeah, it was great to get you on. Thanks for your time. Thanks
Cheers,
for staying.
mate.
Cheers.
Speak to you soon.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Big thanks to Karthik. Okay, let's get back to stock take. Alex Carey. I mean, he's been tearing it up in the Sheffield Shield. Yep. He, of course, produced a little gem of an innings against New Zealand earlier this year. I mean, it was miles away. It was about a year ago, but kind of saved his career.
Definitely saved his career. I think he was gone.
Yeah, and here he is. And he's actually, unlike pretty much everybody else, he has played a lot of cricket recently, and he has scored a lot of runs.
Yeah, his test record is still that one knock of recent times, isn't it?
Yeah.
He's fine. He's a decent wicketkeeper. I think they really like him as a person around. And I don't mean that, I don't mean, he's a good bloke or anything. I really mean he's a professional and, he's very thorough and he tries very hard and he does all the little things that you need to do. Inglis is in the squad though, isn't he?
Yes.
I just think Inglis is a better bat. So whether we see that change this series, I think Carey really struggles against the Indian spinners, and I think Carey can struggle against Bumrah as well. I mean, most people can, but you know what I mean. We might, if he has 4 low scores, he could be out the side. But I feel like he's a person who just finds a way. So I'm more than happy to say that he's in his best form, but his best form is still only worth maybe 6.5 out of 10, isn't it?
6.5.
I feel like I'm making these on my own. Are you just not?
No, I'm agreeing with you. Pat Cummins.
The batter.
the legend.
He made the Pakistan game. Did you see that where he won it with a bat?
Yeah.
He is no longer the bowler he was when no one could hit him at all, where he was averaging about 20-21. He's ballooned to being more. He's ballooned from being Glenn McGrath to being Dennis Lilly. So it's not bad.
Yeah.
But he's no longer just automatic. Like, I think Rabada has a bit of a claim now to be like, I think I might be the second best bowler in the world rather than Cummins. And I think as good as Rabada was before, I think you would have picked Cummins most times. Whereas right now, I'm not sure that you would pick him. But he's still a great bowler. And
is that just wear and tear, natural age?
Yeah, and also
played a lot of cricket, travelled the world.
He made himself very one-dimensional. He bowls the same delivery over and over again once he became a wobble ball bowler.
Yeah.
And I think he's not quite as quick as he used to be. So players can maybe use their feet a little bit more to him than they used to. We saw during the last Ashes, he started going for reverse swing a little bit more, trying to swing the ball a little bit. I think he's trying to get back to where he was before. I still expect him to take a whole ton of wickets in this series, but I don't think he's 36 all out, Pat Cummins. I think he's 8.5, whereas perhaps in that great period he was 9.5, even towards 10 at times.
Mitchell Starc.
Really struggled over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
He's no longer the bowler he was. Essentially, without getting too boring, they made him into a wobble ball bowler, and it means he doesn't swing the ball as much anymore. And it means you can't really use him with the brand new ball because he's not the same threat that he used to be. And he's not very good with the older ball because no balls reverse swing anymore, specifically in Australia where everyone's watching to see what they're doing with the ball, right? So it's very, very tough for him to be the same threat. I think his average over the last 3 or 4 years is hovering around 28 to 30. So it's not like he's dropped off a cliff. But remember, the averages in Australia used to be around 38 runs per wicket, and they've come down to 28, and his average hasn't dropped with that. So I don't think you can play him in every test, but I wouldn't want to play him in Adelaide when the day-night game is on. So I almost give him an extra 1.5 points for that test because he's the world's greatest ever day-night test bowler, mostly because Australia's played about triple the amount of tests as anyone else. That test alone, he gets more. But I think he's a 7. He's almost a stock bowler now. I mean, that's the wrong way of looking at him because he's not a stock bowler, but he's almost like a Neil Wagner type bowler for Australia more than what he used to be, which was give him the new ball and then bring him back for one spell later to bowl short and then a spell later to bowl at your toes. I'm not sure what his role is anymore within that side.
I haven't heard a lot spoken about Nathan Lyon, which is kind of crazy when you consider how good he is and the fact that India have just been shown up playing spin in home conditions. And the fact that they're going to be even more reliant on him because, of course, they are lacking in the all-rounder stakes when it comes to bowling.
So he's just going to have to bowl more overs, is what you mean?
Basically, yeah.
Not batting at number 6.
No.
Although we'd love to see it.
That would be extreme bants if he did rock up at 6. Nathan Lyon against Rishabh Pant, by the way, is one of the...
It's going to be a great contest, isn't it?
Most compelling.
And Jaiswal, really.
Yes.
And there is a thing of, it is very hard to play, it's not hard. Playing finger spin in Australia, and all spin in Australia, is completely different than playing spin anywhere else. Generally, I had a look at this. I think Lyon averages about 38 against India in Australia. One of those series was when he was first starting off, though. So let's say he averages about 33, 34, goes at less than 3 runs and over. I think Australia take that. I think Australia will think Jaiswal and Rishabh Pant, yes, it could get messy, but they might also back him against those guys because of the extra bounce. If you don't get to the pitch of the ball, and we've seen Rohit do that against Nathan Lyon before, where he's just like, oh, well, in India, I come down here and I hit him over long on for 6, and he's done that and scooped it up in the air, just that little bit of extra bounce. And I think against the left-handers, that'll be even more. So I think he's a very important player. He's probably, in this series, he's probably slightly less used to Australia than normal as a strike bowler, because you don't expect him to run through the Indians, although, as you just said, Mitch Santner and Ajaz Patel are on. They've just called us about that. But I think he's probably about an 8 out of 10 for his overall importance because he's going to have to bowl a lot more overs.
And finishing the 11, Hazelwood.
So Hazelwood had a period where he focused on white ball cricket.
Yeah.
And then got, I don't want to say bad at Test cricket, but he wasn't elite at Test cricket. And the last little while, no one has hit him. Like, he took all the wickets in New Zealand, didn't he? I'm not sure if anyone... he might have got 20 wickets in every inning. I don't remember exactly, John, what it was. But I think in the last 5 or 6 Test matches, he's been averaging 13. I'm going to give him a solid 9 on that.